Her hand on me went limp the moment she said his name. The one that got away was coming back to the States next week. We'd been married for 3 years, and for 3 years, she'd always held me tight as we slept. That night, she turned her back to me. It was like sleeping next to a stranger. Later, she'd force me to wear his clothes, telling me I was just a tool for her to control, a stand-in. Nothing more. It wasn't until I handed her the divorce papers that I saw the panic in her eyes. She finally realized that her long-lost love had become my finish line. After I disappeared, she was frantic, desperate to find me. I was half asleep, instinctively snuggling closer into her embrace when the name hit me like a physical blow, turning my body rigid. Ethan Cole, the man hidden in the deepest, most protected album on her phone. She'd mentioned him once, a long time ago, calling him a crush she never had the courage to act on. I swallowed hard, not daring to roll over and see the look on her face. I just mumbled a flat, "Oh." She said nothing else, but her hand slid from my collarbone down to my waist, her fingers digging into my side with a pressure that felt like it was trying to leave a permanent mark. I barely slept. The smell of frying eggs woke me in the morning. Chloe was in the kitchen, wearing the strawberry print apron I bought her. Sunlight caught the ends of her hair, and for a moment, everything seemed normal. I walked up and hugged her from behind, resting my chin on her shoulder. "Morning, babe. Making a special breakfast?" The spatula in her hand paused. She glanced back at me. The corners of her mouth turned up in a smile, but her eyes were ice cold. "Ethan loves his eggs over easy." "I'm practicing." The smile froze on my face. My arms loosened around her. She turned, and with a clean hand, she pinched my cheek hard. "Leo," she said, her voice a low murmur. "Don't you think Ethan will regret it when he sees how good my life is now?" I didn't answer. She let out a sudden, sharp laugh and stood on her toes to give me a peck on the lips. The kiss was devoid of any warmth. "Too bad, isn't it? The good life he'll see is the one you gave me. The thought of it is just disgusting." At the breakfast table, she slid the perfectly cooked, runny-yolked eggs in front of me while she chewed on a dry piece of toast. "Try them. See if they're good enough for Ethan." I poked the yolk and watched it bleed across the plate, my appetite vanishing. As if reading my mind, she kicked my shin under the table. "What's wrong? Scared to eat them? Afraid you might have something in common with him?" I forced a bite down. The metallic tang of the yolk coated my tongue. She watched me, a genuine laugh escaping her lips. "God, Leo, the look on your face. You're like a pathetic dog begging for scraps." That afternoon, while she was out shopping, I got a text. It was a picture of a gray, cashmere sweater. "Ethan used to love this color." The message read, "It'll look good on you, too." I bought it. I replied with a simple, "Okay." A moment later, a selfie appeared. She was in a men's department store, holding the sweater up to herself in a mirror. "What do you think?" she texted. "If I wear it when he gets back, will he think I haven't changed at all?" I stared at her smiling face on the screen until my fingertips went cold. When she got home that night, she tossed the bag at me. "Try it on." I came out of the bedroom wearing it. She circled me, nodding and then shaking her head. "You don't have his build, not quite. But it doesn't matter. He'll be looking at me. Anyway." She reached out and undid the top 2 buttons of my shirt, her fingers deliberately brushing against the skin of my neck. "There, more like him. He always wore his shirts like this." I grabbed her wrist, my voice hoarse. "Chloe, stop." She yanked her hand away, her expression instantly frigid. "Who the hell do you think you are, Leo? You don't get to tell me what to do." I stayed silent. She suddenly raised her hand and jabbed a finger into my chest. "Did you really think I married you because I loved you? I picked you because you were simple, easy to manage. Now Ethan's coming back," she continued, her voice dripping with venom. "Do you really think I have any reason to keep you around?" Her words were a needle, piercing straight through my heart, the pain sharp and absolute. Seeing the color drain from my face, she gave a satisfied smile and turned toward the bathroom. "You're coming with me to the airport tomorrow to pick him up. Wear this." I sat on the couch, the soft cashmere of the sweater clutched in my hand, the fabric feeling rough against my skin. Later that night, she slept soundly, her back to me, her breathing even. She didn't hold me like she used to. I watched her profile in the moonlight, struck by how unfamiliar she seemed. The woman I had loved for 3 years felt like a stranger I was only just meeting. The next morning, I wore the gray cashmere sweater. Chloe inspected me, her gaze critical, like she was examining a gift she was about to give away. On the drive to the airport, she was glued to her phone, scrolling through old pictures of her and Ethan. Two teenagers, smiling without a care in the world. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Should we pick up some flowers?" I asked. She didn't look up. He doesn't care about superficial things. We arrived with half an hour to spare before his flight landed. Chloe stood at the arrival's gate, bouncing on the balls of her feet, the anticipation in her eyes impossible to hide. I stood half a step behind her, feeling like nothing more than an irrelevant shadow. The announcement for his flight's arrival came over the PA system. Her back straightened, her eyes fixed on the gate. A man in a black trench coat emerged from the crowd, tall and handsome, with a confident stride. Chloe's breath hitched. She started to move toward him, then hesitated, glancing back at me with an unreadable expression. Without a word, she turned and ran toward him, her voice filled with a joy I had never heard before. "Ethan!" A warm smile spread across Ethan's face as he opened his arms to catch her. "Chloe, it's been a long time." I stood frozen in place, watching them embrace, feeling as if all the strength had been drained from my body. Chloe pulled back from his hug, but kept hold of his hand, chattering away, the smile never leaving her face. It was a long moment before she seemed to remember I existed. She waved me over. "Leo, come here." As I approached, Ethan's gaze fell on me. It was polite but distant. "And this is—" Chloe, still clinging to Ethan's arm, answered casually, "My husband, Leo Carter." The word husband sounded like she was introducing a piece of furniture. I extended my hand. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Cole." Ethan shook it briefly. His hand was cool. "You too." On the way home, Chloe sat in the passenger seat, turned completely around to talk to Ethan in the back. They reminisced about college, talked about his life abroad. I was just the chauffeur. I glanced at Ethan in the rearview mirror. He was looking at Chloe with a tenderness I had never, ever received from him. When we got to our house, Chloe carried Ethan's suitcase to the guest room, a room that had been untouched since our wedding, decorated entirely to her taste. She turned to me and issued an order. "Go change the sheets in the guest room. Use the new set." I nodded and went to the linen closet. Chloe followed, leaning against the doorframe. "Leo, you can sleep in the study for a while." I paused. "What?" She smiled, as if the answer was obvious. "Ethan's staying in the guest room. I don't want you disturbing him at night." My hand tightened on the fresh linens. "Chloe, this is our home." "It is our home," she said, her tone sharp and unyielding. "Which means I decide who stays here and where they sleep." I didn't argue. I just took the sheets to the guest room. Ethan was looking around the room when I entered. He gave me a polite nod. As I was making the bed, I heard Chloe's voice from the living room. "See, the house is nice, right? Leo takes care of all of it. It's about the only thing he's good for." My hand stilled. It felt like a physical blow to my chest. When I finished, I found Chloe busy in the kitchen and Ethan sitting comfortably on the sofa, reading a magazine. I was about to retreat to the study when Chloe called out, "Leo, come help me with the vegetables." I walked over, and she tossed a bunch of asparagus on the counter. "This is Ethan's favorite. Prep all of it." I washed and trimmed the stalks in silence, listening to Ethan and Chloe's easy conversation from the other room. Every word was like a needle prick. At dinner, Chloe piled food onto Ethan's plate. "Eat up. You're too thin." Ethan smiled. "Your cooking is as good as I remember." Chloe beamed. "Then you have to stay for a while. I'll cook for you every day." I mechanically ate my rice, which tasted like ash. Chloe suddenly looked at me. "Leo, why aren't you eating? Don't you like it?" I shook my head. "No, it's fine." "Then eat," she said, placing a piece of pot roast in my bowl, her tone laced with sarcasm. "We wouldn't want Ethan to think I'm mistreating you." Ethan glanced at me, but said nothing. 7. After dinner, Chloe told me to do the dishes while she and Ethan watched a movie in the living room. I stood at the sink, the sound of running water failing to drown out their laughter. The sound was grating, and my grip on the sponge tightened. When I came out, they were sitting close together on the couch, Chloe's head resting on Ethan's shoulder. The scene was so domestically blissful it burned my eyes. I tried to slip away to the study, but Chloe stopped me. "Leo, Get Ethan a cup of tea. I brought the tea to Ethan, who murmured a quiet thanks. Chloe took the mug from him, tested the temperature with a delicate sip, and then handed it back. Be careful, it's a little hot. She had never shown me that kind of gentle care. Not once. Late that night, I lay on the foldable cot in the study, unable to sleep. The living room light was still on, and I could faintly hear their voices. After what felt like hours, the light went out. I heard footsteps heading toward the guest room. My heart pounded in my chest. I held my breath, listening. I heard Chloe say, "Get some sleep. You must be exhausted." "Yeah," Ethan replied. "You too." Then the sound of a door clicking shut. The knot in my stomach loosened slightly, replaced by a dull, sour ache. For the next few days, Chloe's entire world revolved around Ethan. 8. She woke up early to make his breakfast, and then joined him for a morning run. At lunch, she'd ask him what he was in the mood for, then drag me to the market to buy ingredients. In the evenings, they'd watch movies or go for walks. I was always the third wheel, the silent observer. One afternoon, Chloe decided to take Ethan to a park we used to frequent, and she insisted I come along. She led Ethan to an old oak tree where we had once carved our initials. She pointed to the faded letters. "Look, I carved this years ago. I always imagined showing it to you when you came back." Ethan smiled softly. "Well, now I've seen it." Chloe's eyes sparkled. "Yes, now you have." They stood there, lost in their own world. I stood a few feet away, looking at the tree that bore my initials next to hers, the irony a bitter taste in my mouth. On the way back, Chloe seemed to remember me. "Leo, there's a college reunion tomorrow night. You're coming too." I hesitated. "Is that a good idea?" She shot me a look. "Why wouldn't it be? You're my husband." "Are you afraid to be seen in public?" Ethan chimed in. "Yeah, come on. It'll be fun to see everyone." I didn't refuse, but I knew exactly what I would be at that reunion. A prop for her to show off to Ethan. 9. The next day, on the way to the reunion, Chloe made me change into a new suit and spent a long time adjusting my tie. "Don't embarrass me," she said, patting my cheek with a clear warning in her eyes. The private room at the restaurant was already crowded and loud. When Chloe and Ethan walked in together, the room erupted in cheers and whistles. "Well, look who it is. The prodigal son returns, and with our Chloe. Are we going to be hearing wedding bells soon?" Chloe laughed and playfully swatted at a friend. "Don't be ridiculous." She led Ethan to a seat at the center of the table, then finally pointed to an empty chair on the fringe. "Leo, you sit there." I sat down. No one spoke to me. All eyes were on Chloe and Ethan as they laughed about old times, lost in shared memories. I was an outsider with nothing to contribute. Eventually, someone noticed me and asked Chloe, "Hey, who's this guy?" Chloe took a sip of her wine. "My husband," she said, her tone dismissive. "Leo." A few awkward glances were exchanged around the table. Clearly, no one knew she was married. A woman who used to be close with Chloe leaned in and whispered, "Chloe, when did you get married? You never said anything." Chloe just shrugged. "It wasn't a big deal. We just did it." The woman glanced at me again, then dropped the subject. 10. Throughout the dinner, people kept toasting Ethan, congratulating him on his successful career and, jokingly, on winning back the girl. Ethan handled it with grace, while Chloe sat beside him, expertly deflecting some of the toasts, the two of them moving with the easy synchronicity of a couple. I sat there, silently drinking my whiskey, the burn in my throat no match for the bitterness in my heart. One of the guys, already drunk, slapped Ethan on the back. "You better hold on to her this time, man. You know how many guys were after her. And she ends up with Leo." He trailed off with a disdainful scoff. The implication was clear. Chloe's expression darkened, but she said nothing. Ethan just smiled. "I think, Chloe, and I can handle our own affairs, thanks." My hand tightened around my glass, my knuckles white. Near the end of the night, Chloe went to the restroom, and Ethan followed her out a moment later. Someone finally tried to make conversation with me. "So, what do you do, Mr. Carter?" "I run a small business," I said, forcing a smile. He nodded, his interest immediately gone. A few minutes later, I stepped out for some air and saw them at the end of the hall. Ethan was gently tucking a stray strand of hair behind Chloe's ear. His voice was soft. "Chloe, divorce him. Let's start over." My world tilted. I held my breath. Chloe looked down, silent for a long moment. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red-rimmed. "Ethan." 11. I didn't hear the rest. I turned and walked away, my steps unsteady. Back in the room, I grabbed the bottle of whiskey from the table, poured a full glass, and downed it in one go. The alcohol seared my throat, numbing everything. When Chloe and Ethan returned, they both had a strange look on their faces. Chloe glanced at me, but said nothing. The car ride home was silent. As we neared our house, Chloe finally spoke. "Leo, Ethan asked me to divorce you." My hands clenched the steering wheel. "And what do you think?" The question sounded pathetic and childish the moment it left my lips. Chloe laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound that bounced off the car windows. "What do you think?" I slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt at the side of the road. The streetlight cast long shadows, splitting her face between the darkness and the faint, mocking upturn of her chin. "I agree," I heard myself say, my voice impossibly steady. The smirk on her face vanished, replaced by a look of sheer disbelief, as if she were seeing me for the first time. "Leo, what did you just say?" I unbuckled my seatbelt and turned to her. In the rearview mirror, Ethan's face was a blur. I said, "Let's get a divorce." The house was bought after the wedding, so we split it. Same with the savings. "Your jewelry is yours, and I'll pack my own things." The words tumbled out, a mental accounting I'd been running for years. A wave of relief washed over me. Chloe's hands were balled into fists. "Are you insane? You're doing this because of what Ethan said." I opened the car door, letting the cool night air rush in. "This has nothing to do with him. I'm doing this because I'm done." Ethan got out of the car and stood by Chloe. "Leo, don't be rash." I almost laughed. I just nodded at him. "Congratulations, Mr. Cole." As I walked toward our building, I heard Chloe call my name behind me. Her voice was trembling, stripped of its usual commanding tone. I didn't look back. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the house, the air still thick with the unfamiliar scent of Ethan's cologne. I went straight to the study and started pulling out documents, the deed to the house, bank statements. For years, I had managed this household like a glorified butler. The password to the safe was her birthday. When Chloe and Ethan came in, I was at the dining table, drawing up a list of assets. The scratching of my pen was the only sound in the silent room. 12. "Leo, are you done with this tantrum?" Chloe demanded, trying to snatch the paper from me. I pulled away. "This isn't a tantrum," I said, pushing the completed list toward her. "Look it over. If there are no issues, we can get it notarized tomorrow." Her eyes scanned the figures on the page, and then she laughed. "You think I care about any of this? Leo, how would you even survive without me?" It reminded me of when we first got married. She'd said with the same mocking smile, "What are you going to do with that tiny salary of yours?" "Just stay home. I'll support you." I believed her back then. I quit my job to take care of her, managing her life down to the smallest detail, thinking that was the stability she wanted. "I couldn't before," I said, "but I can now." I folded the list and put it in my pocket. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, City Hall. Before I closed the study door, I saw Ethan putting a comforting arm around Chloe. Her head was bowed, her shoulders shaking. I slept better on that cot than I had in years. When the alarm went off, the sky was just beginning to lighten. I packed a single suitcase with my things. As I passed the living room, I saw Ethan asleep on the couch, curled up under my plaid blanket. The master bedroom door was closed. I had no idea if Chloe was awake. As I was tying my shoes at the door, her door opened. She stood there, hair a mess, eyes red and swollen. "You're really leaving?" she asked. I stood up. "Yeah." She rushed forward and threw her arms around me, holding on with a desperate strength that reminded me of all the nights before, a strength that felt like she was trying to merge our bodies into one. "Leo, I was wrong," she sobbed. "Please don't go. Please." I froze. It was the first time she had ever apologized to me. But the warmth of her embrace couldn't reach the coldness that had settled in my heart. I gently pushed her away. "It's too late." In the elevator, I looked at my reflection in the mirrored walls and straightened my collar. I was still wearing the gray cashmere sweater she'd bought me. I made a mental note to throw it in the first trash can I saw. I was half an hour early at City Hall. I stood on the steps, watching the sun climb higher, shrinking my shadow. Chloe arrived with Ethan by her side. She was wearing a white dress, the same one she wore when we got married. When it was time to take the photo for the divorce certificate, the clerk told us to move closer. Chloe's shoulder brushed against my arm. and I instinctively shifted away. She let out a sharp, sudden laugh and looked right at the camera. "We're divorced," she announced to the room. The moment the green certificate was in my hand, replacing the red one, I felt nothing. It was just the anticlimactic end to a long, overdue project. Outside, Ethan approached me and offered a handshake. "Leo, thank you for taking care of Chloe all these years." I shook his hand. I was well compensated for it. Chloe suddenly spoke up. "I don't want any of the assets. You can have it all." I raised an eyebrow. "No, thank you. I'll take what's mine. I don't want a penny more." As I was walking to the bank, I got a notification on my phone. A wire transfer for $500,000 from her. The memo read, "Compensation." I immediately transferred the exact amount back to her. My memo read, "We're even." That afternoon, I went to a steakhouse, ordered the biggest ribeye on the menu, and ate every last bite. I found myself smiling. Divorce felt incredible. I put the house on the market that same day. Once the sale closed, I planned to head down to Southern California for a while. I heard the ocean was a different kind of blue there. Lying in a hotel bed that night, I stared at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. It was Chloe. I declined the call and blocked her number. The next day, my half of the deposit from the house sale hit my account. Combined with the savings, I had a little over $2 million. Looking at the number, it felt like all the humiliation and heartache of the past few years had been assigned a price tag. It wasn't much, but it was enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. On my way to the airport, I got a text from Ethan. "Chloe's locked herself in her room. She won't eat or drink. Can you please?" I stared at the message for 3 seconds, then deleted it. The cab sped down the freeway, the trees outside the window blurring into a streak of green, reminding me of the dizzying sensation of first entering this world. The ocean in California didn't disappoint. It was the color of an uncut sapphire. As the salty wind hit my face, I remembered the day the system first bound itself to me. World match successful. Host Leo Carter must complete the redemption mission. Guide the villainous supporting character, Chloe Vance, to learn how to love in a healthy way. Mission success will allow for return to original world. I had scoffed at the corny mission title back then. Now, standing on the beach, it felt strangely fitting. I kicked off my shoes, the hot sand warming the soles of my feet. My phone vibrated again. "Ethan, she started breaking things. She says she's going to find you." I ignored it and found a sun-warmed rock to sit on. Staring out at the churning waves, I thought, "Open system panel." A translucent blue screen materialized before me. The text is crisp as if it were printed. "Mission World, the one that got away. Host, Leo Carter. Target, Chloe Vance, supporting character. Mission progress. 98%, 100%. Special trigger condition met. Target Chloe Vance has completed emotional disengagement from host via concrete actions, voluntary dissolution of marriage, willing division of assets, emotional transference. This fulfills the criteria for learning to love in a healthy way. Judgment. Mission complete. Congratulations, host. Return authorization granted. Execute immediate return." I smiled at the screen. That progress bar had jumped pretty fast at the end. It had crawled like a snail for 3 years, then shot up like a rocket in the last few days. Honestly, I knew the end was near the day Chloe said, "The good life he'll see is the one you gave me." The thought of it is just disgusting. That kind of possessive, borderline obsessive behavior isn't love. It's a sickness. She used me as a tool to satisfy her need for control, and Ethan as a fantasy to escape to. Fundamentally, she treated us both the same. The mission was complete the moment she was willing to let go, even if it was to run toward someone else. That act of choosing, of releasing her grip, was enough to satisfy the system's definition of learning to love. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered, and Chloe's frantic sobs filled my ear over the loud, echoing announcements of an airport. "Leo, where are you? Come back. I forbid you from leaving." Her voice was raw, laced with its usual commanding tone, but it had lost all its power. I held the phone away from my ear, letting the sound of the wind cover the line. "Chloe, I thought you wanted to start over with Ethan." "I don't. I just want you," she screamed, her voice cracking. "Are you still mad? I'll cut him off completely, I swear. We can get married again, please." A wave crashed against the rocks, soaking the cuffs of my pants. I looked down at the dark, wet fabric. My voice was calm, as if I were commenting on the weather. "There's no point." "Why?" she cried. "We were together for 3 years." "Because you gave up on me," I said with a small smile. "Yesterday, at City Hall, when you showed up in your wedding dress. You already made your choice, didn't you?" The line went silent. A few seconds later, I heard her choked whisper, "Yes, I gave up on you. Are you happy now? Then go. Get the hell out of my life and never come back." "Okay," I said and hung up. I looked back at the screen. The question, "Execute immediate return," was now flashing red. That was the final piece. It wasn't enough for her to act. She had to say the words. The system needed verbal confirmation. When I first arrived 3 years ago, I foolishly thought I could change her with kindness. My reward was being locked in the bedroom for 3 days because I spoke for 2 minutes too long with a neighbor. I learned then that redemption isn't about affection. It's about guidance. She had to reach the conclusion on her own. It turns out, the shock of her old flame returning was far more effective than my 3 years of slow, patient effort. I stood up, brushed the sand from my pants, and tapped yes on the screen. Return sequence initiated. Countdown, 10, 9, 8. The horizon blurred, the line between the sea and the sky disappearing. 3, 2, 1. My body felt weightless, as if lifted by the wind. The last thing I saw was a child running on the beach, a kite soaring high above him. In the end, Chloe never really learned how to love. But that didn't matter. This was just a novel, and she was the designated villain destined to spice up the main character's romance. I was just an operator, here to run a program. Who would ever take anything that happens in a story seriously? Just before my consciousness faded completely, I thought I heard the system's final notification, frowny face, transport to original world in progress. This was great. I'd be back just in time for the grand opening of the new hot pot place near the office. I call up old Dave and the guys, get a round of beers. Way better than staring at the ocean. But the rich smell of spicy broth never came. Dave's booming laugh didn't echo in my ears. There was only a swirling, empty whiteness. No up or down, no sense of time. I felt like a plume of smoke, unable to even form the intention of moving a hand. This wasn't my apartment. It definitely wasn't the hot pot restaurant. Return failed. The cold, mechanical voice that resonated in my mind wasn't the system. It was older, more profound, and utterly indifferent. I tried to curse, but I had no voice. I could only watch as the memories of Leo Carter dissolved like mist. The city streets, the taste of late-night coffee, Dave's beer belly, all fading to gray. They were replaced by a torrent of new, fragmented images crashing through my consciousness. Red-hot lava consuming a village, hands reaching out from a flooded city, a mother hiding her baby in a dry well during a war. These memories weren't mine, yet they felt deeply, achingly familiar, like scars on my very soul. "You never left." The ancient voice returned, a hint of mockery in its tone. "Leo Carter was a costume you wore. Your original world was a home you imagined." I was suddenly, shockingly aware of my form, a shimmering ball of light, floating in the void, its edges pulsing. "You are the architect of this reality." Those words hit me with more force than Chloe's demand for a divorce. The architect, the cosmic force that governs life and death, fortune and fate, but I was just celebrating a $2 million bank account and planning what to order for dinner. 3 centuries ago, you fell from a world you called Earth. Your consciousness merged with this nascent universe, and you became its guiding hand. The voice softened, as if recalling a distant memory. In the beginning, you wept. You couldn't bear the suffering of the world, so you secretly altered fates, nearly unraveling the timeline. I had a faint memory of that, a nagging urge to make it rain during a drought, or to make a cheating husband trip and break his leg. But the cosmic order cannot play favorites. The voice turned cold again. Over the centuries, you witnessed so much death and sorrow that your heart hardened. You grew distant. It was true. Eventually, I could watch a plague spread and calmly calculate if the death toll maintained the balance. I could see good people suffer and reason that it was a necessary trial in their destiny. Once, after a flash flood destroyed a town, I even found myself thinking that it would reduce future conflicts. If you had continued on that path, You would have lost your humanity entirely, becoming nothing more than a machine of cosmic law. This world would have withered from your cold indifference. And so, I created a system for myself, invented a persona named Leo Carter, and threw myself into the melodramatic plots of disposable stories. The cruel wife, the one that got away, the fight over assets. It was all a script you wrote for yourself. The voice carried a trace of something like a sigh. You required these intense emotional conflicts, the push and pull of love and hate, to remind yourself that you were once human. I thought of the crushing weight of Chloe's arms around me as she slept, the sting of her calling me a pathetic dog, the raw agony in her voice during that final phone call. All that genuine pain, all that cathartic release, it was all self-prescribed medicine. Chloe's obsession, Ethan's return, even the $2 million you received, all of it was the world bending to the will of your subconscious. I finally understood. There was no mission. I was just an actor who had finished a play I'd written for myself. A crack appeared in the white void, offering a view into the world of the story. Chloe was alone in the empty house, staring at the walls covered with photos of us. Ethan had been knocking on her door for 3 days, but she hadn't opened it. She's beginning to process loss. My own thoughts and the ancient voice seemed to merge. Your departure actually managed to teach her something. I floated closer to the rift, looking at the woman I had once dismissed as a hopelessly broken character. The feeling of detachment was gone, replaced by a lingering melancholy, like the feeling after the credits roll on a movie you truly cared about. The image in the rift flickered. Chloe pulled open a drawer and took out a paring knife, the one I'd bought her for cutting fruit. Its blade was sharp and clean. She pressed the edge against her wrist, her eyes as empty as a dried-up well. In her other hand, she clutched a crumpled photo of us from our first anniversary. A jolt went through my core. The ball of light that was me began to vibrate violently, twisting the very fabric of the void. You must not interfere directly. The ancient voice was a stark warning. Her life and death are part of the established timeline. To hell with the timeline. Ignoring the rules, my consciousness shot through the rift like a bolt of lightning. In the next instant, I was standing in the familiar living room. When Chloe saw me, her eyes widened in shock. The knife clattered to the floor. "Leo, are you a ghost?" I looked at her pale, tear-streaked face. My voice was deeper, more resonant than it had been on the beach. "Don't do something stupid." She lunged to embrace me, but I stepped aside. She stumbled and fell to the floor, looking up at me with eyes full of tears. "You left. You said you were never coming back." "I came to check on you," I said, kicking the knife farther away, "to see if you were really going to destroy yourself." She wept on the floor like a lost child. I thought I didn't care, but after you were gone, the house felt so empty, so terrifying. When Ethan knocked on the door, all I wanted to do was scream at him to go away. I think She didn't finish, but I knew what she meant. You never know how much you value a toy until it's gone forever. "It's impossible for us," I said, cutting her off, my tone flat. "It's been impossible since the moment you told me you gave up." She looked up, her eyes a startling red. "Why? Because of Ethan?" "It has nothing to do with him," I said, my gaze drifting to a photo of us on the wall. "It's because you never understood what it means to truly love someone. How to love someone." She opened her mouth to argue, but a screech of tires and a sickening crunch echoed from the street below, followed by panicked screams. Chloe instinctively glanced out the window. I knew what had happened. Ethan had been downstairs. Now he was lying in the middle of the road. I had arranged it. The moment she picked up that knife, I nudged things. A delivery truck with faulty brakes, a moment of distraction. It wasn't a major intervention, just an acceleration of an inevitable outcome. His thread of fate was thin. He wasn't meant to last a month anyway. Chloe didn't know any of that yet. She just looked confused for a second before her eyes snapped back to me. "What are you?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her, and with a mere thought, the faint pinkish aura of luck that hovered around her head popped like a balloon. It fizzled and faded, leaving behind the plain, gray-white energy of an ordinary person, no different from the janitor cleaning the building lobby. Without the protection of a main character's fortune, she would just be a normal woman. She would no longer be consumed by such extreme love or hate. She would live a quiet, peaceful life. That was for the best. Live a good life, Chloe, I said and turned to leave. Leo, she called after me, her voice breaking. Will you ever come back? Without turning around, my form slowly became transparent. No. Back in the void, the rift sealed itself. The ancient voice sounded almost exasperated. You demoted her from protagonist to a background character and expedited Ethan's death. That will cost you a significant amount of your core energy. My ball of light flickered in acknowledgement. It was worth it. The light in the void contracted slightly, and memories I had suppressed began to surface. Chloe's cousin, who broke into our storage unit last year and stole my best bottles of whiskey, bragging that a kept man like Leo wouldn't know good liquor anyway. The owner of the corner market, who loved to gossip that I was completely whipped by that wife of mine. Not a real man at all. Ethan's circle of friends, who looked at me at the reunion as if I were a piece of dirt on their shoe. When I was wearing the Leo persona, I ignored it all. As a mere operator, it wasn't my place to get into fights with NPCs. But things are different now. I am the architect of this world, and being petty is one of my divine rights. What are you doing now? The ancient voice asked, wary. Large-scale alterations to destiny can cause a cascade effect. A cold, silver light emanated from my core. I smiled but said nothing. My consciousness spread like a net across the entire world, and the auras of every person who had ever shown malice toward Leo Carter became visible to me. The pale yellow glow of minor wealth around Chloe's cousin began to leak away, fading to the gray of subsistence. The business deal he'd just secured suddenly fell through. His stock portfolio crashed at the opening bell. The stable, white aura of the market owner was now threaded with black filaments of financial loss. His freezer shorted out overnight, melting $1,000 worth of ice cream. The next day, a shipment of milk arrived just days from its expiration date. 22. Ethan's friends had it even worse. Their comfortable orange auras of prosperity plummeted to the muddy brown of endless toil. One got a stack of parking tickets, another's investments were wiped out, and a third couldn't win a single hand of poker. And it didn't stop with them. The cousin's son, a shoe-in for a scholarship to a prestigious high school, inexplicably bombed his entrance exam. The market owner's wife had her purse snatched, losing the cash she had just withdrawn for rent. The man from a reunion who had heckled me the loudest, his sister, on her way to a final interview for her dream job, got a call saying the position had been eliminated. One person offends you, and their whole family pays the price. The ancient voice remarked, harsh. My light pulsed gently, like a cat stretching after a long nap. 23. Watching them all scramble and curse their sudden string of bad luck, I felt the energy I'd expended was well worth it. They would probably go to their graves, wondering why their lives had suddenly fallen apart. That's fine. They don't need to understand. They only need to have learned a lesson. Some people who seem insignificant are not to be trifled with. Some hidden rules are not to be broken. This wasn't anger. This was simply balancing the books. The light in the void grew brighter, warmer. Feel better now? The ancient voice asked, amusement coloring its tone. My light pulsed. Yes. For my next world, I think I'll choose a story where everyone is nice to me. After all, maintaining world peace is boring. Maintaining my own peace of mind is what's truly important. The void settled back into stillness, but the light at my core was now a little brighter and a little warmer than before. 24. So what's next? The ancient voice asked, a note of anticipation in its tone. I considered it. Perhaps a story with a bit more sweetness. A romance, maybe? The beautiful, obsessive mentor who falls madly in love with me. Yes, I want a story so sweet it gives me cavities. The ball of light, that was me, seemed to laugh. Being a god is no fun if you can't be whimsical once in a while. The next world, the void began to shift. New scripts floated in my consciousness. Historical dramas, epic fantasies, modern thrillers. A list a mile long. I smiled. I finally understood the old saying, heaven is indifferent, treating all of creation as straw dogs. It wasn't born of coldness, but of a fear of looking too closely, of feeling too much. But if you strip away all feeling, what's the point of being a god at all? Let's go with that fantasy epic. I decided. I hear the villainous in that one loves with a terrifying madness. It should be just a thing to cure my hardening heart. The void swirled, and a new vessel began to form around my consciousness as memories were stripped away and rewritten. What should my name be this time? I think I'll stick with Leo Carter. It sounds like a real person, someone with flesh and blood. End.